Okay, welcome to the session of our M&A Roundtable. This is my privilege and honor to introduce our spotlight speaker for this evening, David Shavzin. He's the president and founder of Value Track. Where here he advises companies and help them sell for much higher value than if they had not contacted him. He has been doing that for 20 years. He's also very proud to be the founder and president of Exit Plan Exchange in Atlanta. He has a a corporate career in management consulting, and he's also the past president of the Institute of Management Consultants of Georgia. I'm going to turn this over to David. David, today he's going to be talking about a very important topic, especially in the beginning of the year. We have a lot of crisis going, both foreign and both domestic and foreign, and we are coming out of this pandemic, and there's other things that have been happening in the marketplace. And Dave's going to talk about how that is going to affect a value and how you build that value in the business. So, looking forward to this talk. It's M&A and value building in 2022, and what's new and what never changes. So, David, thank you for joining us this afternoon for our M&A Roundtable session, and welcome.
Thanks very much, Kyle. I appreciate that. I'm listening to all of you talk, and I'm feeling wholly inadequate. At least 3 PhDs in the room. So I'm not sure I'm going to teach a lot. I'm going to share, I think, a lot from our perspective, and would love to make this as interactive as possible. I talked a little bit with Kyle last night, and I asked if he had a shy group of folks this morning. And he laughed, and I won't tell you exactly what he said, but please jump in as we get through some of this stuff. And on a very serious note, taking a look at the organization, how you are working, and what M&A is all about was really nice to see. It's kind of how I have tried to function over the years in terms of bringing a very in-depth group around the business owner, right? I shared this with Kyle. And you see this all the time. Business owners, they're running around. They pick up the phone and they may call for help, but they're going to call each one of you individually with the same issue, and you're all going to give them great advice, and then they don't know what to do with it because that great advice is different. So definitely in that same vein. I'm not going to repeat everything that Kyle just went through. As he mentioned, there's a little bit of the background, the career, but coming from a very large corporate environment. A lot of work in finance and M&A and then operational roles, and jumped off to create something where I could help some of these smaller businesses. So as you mentioned, did have the pleasure of working in Paris. It was more eating and drinking wine, and working came, I think, number 3, but a lot of fun. And came back from that with a 2.5-year-old and about to be born little girl who was born back in the U.S. and then a third son. The 2 girls are in Chicago, and I'm here in Atlanta, by the way. And my son, the third one, is a special needs child, which fortunately we learned very early on. And so we've had a couple of decades plus of dealing with some of these issues that you all deal with and that we deal with our clients and businesses and planning and estate planning and all of the above. So very quickly, we all have different definitions of mid-market, lower mid-market, and so on. So that just gives you a general range of where we play. And on, excuse me, you probably all see this, especially those of you who are dealing directly with owners, when they think that they're going to get ready to sell or that they are ready. And they knock on the door, they're referred in, and we have a conversation. I would say 75% of them are not actually ready, they or their business. Some of you talked about it in your introductions. They're not ready themselves. In fact, when they realize what they really need to plan out, but shocking, I know, most of them have this very inflated idea of what their company is worth. We'll talk more about that. And so seeing all this over the years is what drove us to pull this process together from A to Z, just like you all talk about. It's let's help these owners early on, full life cycle, and start early on building value. Too often we get in front of business owners, boomers, 20, 30 years in business, good businesses, they're making money, kids went to college, they have the second home, but they're not really ready and understanding value when they want to get out. And we're trying in these cases to do in a few years what they could have, should have been doing for the past few decades. That's just the harsh reality of it. And often, like I say, boomers, 60s and 70s, some health issues, and it becomes a little bit of a challenge. So that's just a little bit of the stage setting. And this is always an interesting slide. If you look at the right-hand side, I was actually preparing to do a talk in a couple of weeks, and the column on the right just keeps changing in terms of the priority order. Okay, so look at that list though. We're in a just bizarre, strange, difficult time with all this happening. It's unbelievable. I don't know, if we've seen these complexities in the last few decades. All that's happening, and you know all about it, and all your clients are dealing with it. So just set that as backdrop, and then what we see in brief: deals taking longer, more scrutiny from buyers than ever before, and more scrutiny from lenders when there's a loan situation from a buying perspective from the purchaser. I say this: boomers are 2 years older than pre-pandemic, as we all are. 20 years ago, when I was talking to owners, I couldn't get them to even think or talk, nothing about exit. I've got time. And so I tell them now we're all 20 years older. And unfortunately, too often from a value perspective, wasted 20 years, certainly not optimized it. And you all see this all the time as well. Buyers never want to pay for, they don't want to pay for anything, but they don't want to pay for future earnings, right? Everyone takes a look, what'd you do for me, up till now, what's the last 3 years, and try to work it from that side of the negotiating table. Even less so now coming through COVID. On the positive, we definitely see an understanding of what happened in 20 and 21. If there were good, solid businesses prior to, and now are coming out, and that trajectory is back up, it's a help, and buyers understand, and it's all good. I think it's just a separate lesson for any business. If you're not fundamentally running the business well, you saw those fall apart in the last couple of years, either completely or are really having to rebuild dramatically. So that's kind of what I titled as new. It's not, you're seeing it all. It's not surprising. Certain industries are doing much better than others. Many are doing really well. Others are doing not so well. It's all over the board. There's trillions of cash out there looking for a home, good cash flow businesses, but it's kind of a mess. So what's not new? And the point here is, I would make this statement: nothing has changed. Nothing has changed for these situations with these business owners. You have these things that we just talked about on the right hand of the screen, and that complicates things. But fundamentally, most of them have not sold a company. They don't understand the process, what goes into it, the complexities. I'm probably being generous when I say they have a mild to stunningly inflated, generous on the mild side, inflated idea of what their value is. I'll say really about half of them, I think, don't know, and they say that, and that's great, that's fine, right? And the other half have gotten this idea in their head through, a variety of sources and reasons that they shouldn't. And so we are often talking them down off the ledge there. About 3/4 of these lower mid-market business owners are boomers. And so what I said before, I repeat, they don't have more economic cycles to go through. If we're talking to a 30-year-old business owner, yeah, maybe. And so they get into some really tight situations that we'll talk about, having some significant decisions to make. And then, like I say, I'm guessing it's similar in your world. There's not even a semblance or beginning of an exit plan. Sometimes they're not even doing the business planning that they ought to be doing. So they're left in this situation. And like I say, this is probably 3/4 of our clients. Some of them have woken up. So what I wanted to do now, just set that stage with these things. I don't think I taught anybody anything here, but get us all in the same playing field. And then I'm going to walk through just very brief case studies. These are clients of ours, prospects, different things we've come across that are brief and really just illustrate some of the things I've been talking about here, some other things, And really what I'd love to do is make it interactive with some of these things are challenges that we've run into, sharing your knowledge, jumping in with questions, please feel free to do that. But I'll walk through and just kind of, if you would, I don't mind stopping, but unmute and do it verbally because I won't see everybody on screen. So don't hesitate to do that. So, you know, these things I've got to sound familiar to all of you. We just, like I say here, fired a client. We had engaged, we had the check, we were going through the whole process and talked about it over and over again. And they insisted on going to market at 3 times what we believe it's really worth. We are really good at what we do, but not that good. And so we had to just pull away from it and explain to them that we would look like idiots putting a price out there for this business that way. And you know, that's an outlier for us. I think we're pretty good at it generally. In this second case, it took a long time. We spent a long time. They were really fixated on something about twice what it was worth. And just again, back and forth, a lot of education. And in this case, I'll say, had done a really good job, you know, just in business a few years, really working it hard. But over time, as we were talking with them, they were pulling in big contracts. So they really were building that business. And it looks like we're about to close at a place right in between where they had wanted and where we had originally been on our side thinking. And so that turned into a positive. But this is a challenge that is just daily for us. I'm sure for you, if you have any thoughts as we go through this, you know, or we get to Q&A on, you know, what you talk to your clients about to get them to understand that the realities of the market and value, that would be great. That'd be helpful and probably good for the rest of the folks on the call here. We spend a lot of time educating them. We start out always with an initial estimate of value. And it is, like I say, devastating. I usually say when they stop crying, we pick them up off the floor and we sit down and we don't just throw a number at them. We spend a couple hours going through why. And so the cool thing is the next morning, they start making decisions differently. We have a lot of things to discuss about, are we going to go to market right away or not? But as the business continues, they start to get it and really get some new ideas in their head about it. But it's a challenge. It can be really, especially if they've had this number in their head for a long time, or you know, if they really need it, think they need it, want it, if they truly need it to have a successful retirement. So this is just.
Sorry, David, chime in real quick.
Yep.
I mean, I've turned away clients from the get-go when the number that they have in their head doesn't connect with the market.
Yeah.
And I learned my lesson almost as hard as you have. So now I'm very cautious to have that frank conversation about, you know, let's make sure we're playing in the same, you know, we're both in the same bus.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do that to the greatest extent possible. And sometimes you get into it and they go, okay, I get it, I understand. And you get a little farther down the road. They haven't been thinking about it very much. And then really, frankly, the other component that comes up, and we push them in this direction, of course, either to talk with their financial advisor or we bring a financial advisor to the table. So sometimes it takes that process to then look at, okay, what do they need? And those things come together. Most of the time we get them there. That first case there was an extreme example, unfortunately, and it's one of those things where, you know, it's a boomer couple, and you know, I just don't know what is going to happen with them. So
David, we disengaged with 3 in the past 2 weeks because of that very reason. We have another client that's a SaaS company, and we do a valuation. We have a third-party valuation that's done, and my colleague, so we work as a team. So one of my advisors took a call with a client, and so was kind of talking about pricing and so on. They made a joke, 130 million, and so you don't know if that's a joke, or if are they really serious? And no, not 130 million. But we definitely want some double digits. And
Yeah.
so we are actually having he's in Panama right now. The other partner's in Romania. So it's like, you know what? I told David, who's on my team, let's get them on the phone. We need to figure out what their expectations are before we spend any more money on, quality earnings and all that stuff. So having a call on Saturday, said may go to 4. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, we don't want to waste our time with their time. I have another client in the diversity space, and yeah, we just wasted, we've been engaged her since June. So what you're saying now, you lose a lot of time in the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could definitely relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, it's time, and you want to help folks, but yeah, you at some point you've got to step back. So here, this is just a quick point. And again, we all see it all the time. It's simply the books, the bookkeeping, and if there's one first thing we do in a first conversation, it's get these things, or when they in an embarrassed way say, well, I'm not sure, they're in order, get these things done. We've had 3 people write us checks to start projects, and it's been months and they're trying to get them together. So that's, I think, universal in terms of the prep, or the lack, say that just the lack of the basics infrastructure, in so many of these businesses. This was a really interesting one. Bottom line, it came down as we were looking at Buyer Pool, one of their large clients really was one that made most sense. And, I always say, I'm always careful, right? We got a price that was 4 times the first offer. We're not going to do that all the time. In this situation, there are a lot of dynamics going on, but for me, the lesson here was having our team really dig in and really understand, as we do the business owner, what they're selling, and who the particular buyer is, or the people that we're talking to from a negotiating standpoint, and really what that value is to them. We don't have to get time to get into value in all its nuances. That could be 27 hours and a lot of debate, but different buyers are going to look at the business differently, and they're going to put out a different price. And so we knew what was going on with their client. We knew how to get in front of them. It took some time, but step by step sort of built out why they really should be paying the price that they finally paid for our client. And again, it's just understanding the situation, having some professional discussions, and understanding the situation on both sides of the table.
David, do you mind? Can I build you for a second on this one? Do you mind going a little bit deeper? What contributed to 4x, and how did the buyer? How do you eventually get to that number? What was the consequences? What were the drivers that got them, the buyers, to see that they want to pay a little bit extra?
Yeah, thanks for asking. A few things, just a whole list of things. On the buyer side, there was a gentleman leading that team who was fairly new to the company, and so didn't have a full grasp of his new internal operations and dynamics and so on. This is that was part of it. Then this was a software product, and not really understanding fully the dynamics in part. And then I think just simply looking at it as, it was so much more strategic to their business than they were thinking. We also stepped back to look at the infrastructure of the client, what their organization looked like, their facilities, what the package was doing for them. There was another package they were using. We showed them how this one was so much better. They could be taking this one in and actually moving it across the organization. We got into pricing because our client had been in there a long time. So we understood their cost structure of their products and so on. We just started to build the case that way. It was almost like, it really took me back to my old corporate days where we were doing this in reverse, right? So we were putting this together, looking at what we had, what the acquisition target had, building our case to, on the one hand, why we need to go buy this, the value to us, and then at the same time, of course, starting to negotiate at a lower price. But it was just factual. This is what's going on. Here's what you guys are doing. Here's what this can save you, and so on. So it was a really good exercise to walk through. And again, disclaimer: we don't always do 4 times, but that was a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also knowing what the buyers' motivations are. Some buyers are fear of missing out, or fear of losing the deals of the competition or to a competitor. or just losing out in general, or if they're looking to roll that and combine it with another company to sell it, if it's a private equity or platform. Good information to know. But yeah, I'm working on a similar deal right now where it's a public company, and we're trying to 2x their offer. So we're right now we're trying to do the stuff you're talking about, show them where the value is to get their, get the number up. But yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
So,
and you raise a good point. The motivations of the different buyers are going to be different. Yeah,
right.
and that can lead you to that spot where the price may be higher based on that particular buyer. So yeah, this is just a lesson. You've seen this. Partners start fighting, and usually there's not a lot of reason. Usually can be ended early, but we've got this case now where we're really just waiting. 2 years. They're hoping to. I think this month finally get into court. Some of that was delayed with the pandemic, but my advice is always just write a check. I mean, a couple of years of chaos, devolving down, business gets hurt. So you're wasting time. The remaining owner, doesn't have, missed out all this time really to build the business back up. There's just nothing good that comes from these things. And that takes, as you all know, both of the attorneys and both of the principals in these negotiations. Anybody can kind of mess it up, but try to get away from the emotion. And I know it can be painful to write a check of whatever size to that person you're fighting with, but it's an investment in the future. So we see that, but that's, like I say, held back. And I don't know, what the situation will be like for them now with a remaining partner going to market. We just, we'll see. But definitely.
Can I ask you a question, David?
Yeah.
This particular deal, it was delayed. Did it have an offer on the table already, and the buyer kind of is sticking around, or is just that it didn't go to market yet because of the divorce?
Yeah, no, it did not go to market, and that was all very purposeful. We talked through it all, and we just said it just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could have, but it's just,
Right.
it's just a mess to start with. So, yeah. So here's another one. This one we're in process with, and great company, great technologies, but has partner organizations that are very integrated into the overall IP and products and services, and they've all been getting along great, but there were either no agreements in place all these years, or some old ones, and so everything had to be kind of redone. And you have that delicate nature of, oh, hey, can we either write this agreement we never had, or can we change some things here? And then you get to the discussion of why, and then they find out, and maybe there's some leverage there. So again, a lot of wasted time. A lot of this, as you can see, are things to prepare way ahead, right? These things are all just good business, period, right? At the end of the day. But in this case, we're having to unwind a lot of things, get some things, and it's going to, either way, it's going to be a little challenge, as I say, on the defensive. Even cleaned up, it's still more complicated when you've got 2 or 3. The acquisition target is relying on these other agreements that can be tenuous. And the other thing that could have happened here early on is our client could have brought them inside, and he could have acquired them, so it was all clean inside the one company. And so again, probably 6-8 months delay, going to market. This was interesting. A few construction related companies, and out there talking to buyers, and some of these that were, the obvious targets, and they would absolutely do it and have the cash. Some of them are telling us, like, what, we got 3 years of work. We can't even see ourselves buying something and taking something on. You can't get a door, you can't get a window these days. And all these projects are just pushed out. So that was really interesting coming out of COVID. Those will happen. We've got some, definitely some buyers lined up, but everyone in this, any of these related industries can't get anything. You see it at home if you're buying or moving, and a really interesting dynamic. So here, another life lesson. We did some upfront work, got through the estimate of value, had a lot of discussions, ready to pull the trigger, and it was like, oh, I think I can do it. I think I can sell my company on my own. And you can see what happened. And it was months and months and months, a lot of money. And I think somebody mentioned it as you all were talking. They're back at running the business now, and I don't know what where they're going to go. So I will say, on a positive note, for me, what I see is that where you couldn't get people to start thinking about exit, and I'm talking 70-year-olds, even 80-year-olds, again, those boomers who went through the last 20 years of 9/11, the recession, COVID, we see a lot now starting at least to wake up, reach out. And in our little world, we're seeing a number now that are coming at us with a more realistic perspective. They know they're not ready. We need to take some time. And so I was telling Kyle yesterday, there's a steady flow of those. And I think that's only because of COVID. That really got them going. And then there's that value thing again. It's nice when they come and they don't know the value, or they're humble enough to listen and let us take them through it. So that was it. That was rapid fire, but hopefully got some ideas going. And I put these out as my questions for you all to think about too, as we talk about in whatever time we have left. But I'd love to have certainly any questions, but any other thoughts on all of this? I know it's a short version of what could be a 20-hour discussion.
Yeah, a lot of, David, a lot of what you're sharing, most definitely seen it. Almost every scenario you laid out, I have real examples. I had a PR firm, paid me 25 grand to sell their company, and then the owner is going through a divorce, and we were sitting in that deal for about 1.5 years. And we just termed it out recently, but yeah, we definitely seen a lot of what you're sharing here. Are you seeing what I'm seeing in almost as far as lack of preparation? Definitely. Is Scott still on? Scott still here? I have a client now that same tech company. He has 2 companies, and he runs the revenue through one of the businesses, and the other business has a zeroed out tax return. So he sent in the tax return. I was like, hey, it's all zeroed out here. What are we doing here? Like, what's going on? So, well, all the revenue, everything is in the other company. I said, well, we need to get these financials, restated. We need, what we're going to show the buyer here. So, some of it is lack of preparation. The other thing is not wanting to spend the money to get, get a good bookkeeper or get a good financial accountant to help them with their forecasting, help them with getting cash flow statements, P&Ls, balance sheets, like, so this even happened with some of the larger companies. They're not getting the right service. And I don't know, is Scott, you still with us here?
Yes.
Can you talk about that lack of preparation? Because I get frustrated, and it's funny. My clients actually put their CPAs under the bus. When I speak with a CPA, they tell me, well, hey, this guy still owes me a check. So I'm like, okay, I see what's happening here. What?
Right, Kyle. That happens more often than not. And I constantly tell people, if you're thinking about selling your company, you can't just flip a switch and it's going to happen. You need to be prepared, so do everything properly, and don't try to fool anybody, because you're not going to. Be forthright. Let's get a hold of what the numbers really are, get appraisals, and you're going to need proper financial statements for that. And go in with the proper knowledge of where, you stand a good chance of winding up. And absolutely do your tax planning, right? It's not what you make, it's what you keep. So don't lie to yourself about what you think your company is worth, and don't think you're smarter than the buyer, right? Because you're going to turn them off. Yeah, more often than not. Kyle, I've seen financial you're not going to believe it. On a tax return, the Schedule L is your balance sheet. And assets don't equal liabilities and capital. I don't know what software would allow that. It's unbelievable, So I agree with you guys 100%. Be prepared, be forthright, and you know what? You'll have a quicker and better result.
Definitely. Hey, Jeff, you want to chime in here from a CFO perspective?
Yeah, I do. You know, you guys have said it so well today, and I've seen it so many times. Clients think they're smarter than us, and unfortunately, and you know what? When you have that, when they want to run the process, I run for the hills. I tell the client, if you think you can do it on your own, go ahead. And I tell them, because otherwise they're going to fight with you all the time and tell you you don't know as much about my business as I know. I know everything about it. And those kind of guys or those kind of ladies are not good clients. And you're not going to be successful. You're going to have fighting over fees. So I generally stay away from those kind of clients.
Yeah, Jeff, you know, you say that, and it's true. And I say, you know, they may be as smart as us. We have different areas of expertise they simply don't have that we bring to the table. But those things are really tough because you were in business 20 years, 30 years. You did really well. How could anybody teach me anything? Sometimes we hear that. Real quick, I wanted to point this out. You know, we talked a little bit about these different cases. A lot of these are transaction point or leading up. But on the side of value building, just a quick point, which is in our minds, from our perspective, every part of the business contributes to value, right? So we talked about IP. You know, I'm looking at Dr. Mark on screen, having people in the right mindset, right? From marketing to IT to, we talked about the team working well together and engaged towards these goals. And so when we look at these situations, you know, all of you are contributing to this, right? The book's in order contributes to value, right? Because you're going to have a better face at the outset with it. If nothing else, it's going to go more quickly, the sale process. Strong leaders, especially these days. I didn't even mention that, but you know, we're talking to buyers and they're looking more than ever at who's in that acquisition, about to be acquired company, because everyone's desperate for good people. It's really kind of weird and funny and interesting. So all these other players, if you think about this, every part of the business functioning well, that's where we try to have these discussions. And you're right, Jeff, you know, it's sometimes you just can't do anything and you walk on by, and other times, you know, you can. But you just, you know, you get wise and you just figure out when to cut the cord and go on to somebody who does want help. Yeah.
Hey, David, one thing stood out, and good point, by the way. And I can tell you out of fact, you know, due diligence, I think you had a couple of slides back, you were just saying that it's just taking longer. I don't know if maybe Peter or Andrew can chime in on the legal due diligence and what really slows down the process. What, you know, is it specific to the business, or is it time? Like maybe you guys can talk to that about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think sometimes the seller gets the impression that the buyer is focused only on this deal and getting it done. So, you know, the diligence process can take longer, not necessarily because, you know, they're being more thorough or whatever, but because they're juggling things and they're you know, not prioritizing it. But so you have to kind of like work with the seller to calm them down and you know, reassure them that the buyer is probably still interested.
Mm-hmm. And that could kind of work both ways too, right? The buyer can be proactive and have his whole checklist, his whole team in place. He gives it to the seller. It's like, what the hell is all of this? I got to put all this stuff together. And the buyer's like, hey, is the seller still engaged? He's still interested. Like I sent him the checklist like, you know, 2 weeks ago. I haven't got anything back, right?
That's true.
My favorite, I'm sure Andrew can appreciate this, is when they tell you, well, I gave them all that during the due diligence. They don't understand the difference when you have to prepare the schedules. That's where they put their money where their mouth is, as opposed to the due diligence. You hit print, send them whatever. But when it comes to preparing the schedules, it's basically part of the contract. And if there's information that's missing or incorrect, they're on the hook for that. So that's the part that there's a big disconnect when they say, oh, I already sent it to them. They shouldn't need this information again.
Exactly. It's funny. Hey, Rob, I want to get you in here, Rob. We were working on a deal about 4 years ago, and we were going back and forth negotiating this deal, and my client kept coming back and is pretty much asking for money, just changing the number, and like what the hell? So we went back, we keep getting the number. Then he came to me and he said, "Hey, we need an additional 500 grand." I was like, "What do you mean? This guy's not going to budge. This is where we at." So, I sat down my financial plan, we put a plan together, and for my retirement, I need an additional 500 grand. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and he lost that deal because he had no upfront plan. And I don't know if you want to be greedy or just that, hey, that was his number and that was it. But interesting story. So whenever we engage, we want to know who's their financial plan. We want at least have a conversation with the client, have one in the same, in the same path.
Yep. Oh, totally. And even on that point, have them outline lifestyle, because many business owners have a lack of preparation, not just in the business, but in their personal world. How many people have a corporate car? How many people have their benefits, health benefits, and everything else for the business? Then when they do their calculations and say, oh, I'm getting this, I'm good for retirement. Well, now you have this much more expense that you have to pay. Now you have more of this that has to come out of your income. And the lack of preparation I'm seeing is on all fronts when it comes to these types of transactions, because people forget being a business owner, there's a lot of fun perks, but the second you give that up, you give up those perks and the pie you're pulling from looks a lot different.
I want to jump in. Mark has been so polite. He's just been raising his hand and not talking. So Mark.
Thank you, David. No, I think the points that the attorneys and the CFOs were bringing in, brings a different dimension to it. But I particularly liked, not only did you mention my name, David, which I appreciated before, but that issue of the importance of the leadership, the importance of the talent, that at this point in time with the Great Resignation and all talent being lost to organizations, just hearing from you that reinforcement of how important that is in business transactions and M&A transactions, and the sense that, you can't change a culture last minute. You can't institute a really positive, and I see Robin shaking, you can't change that organizational culture because you decided I want to sell my business and now I'm going to start being nicer to my employees, to my staff. It really does take preparation, and it takes a commitment over time to develop that business before you're even thinking about selling it. And that's a challenge. So how does that even get inculcated into people's consciousness about the way they should be running their business for a lot of reasons, but eventually culminating in, I want to sell this business and I want to get the best price for it, because a lot of the value of the organization is the people that are going to come with the transaction, right? I guess, we can talk, and I'm looking forward to Robin and I having a conversation sometime soon, sharing ideas. But even how do we as people who specialize in organizational culture and those kind of issues that have to do with the people aspect of it, work quickly if that's necessary to institute a change of the culture? I don't know if it works that way. People don't trust it. In a way, it's a signal that says, boy, the boss must be thinking of selling us. And, that doesn't create a great sense of security on jobs, and people feel insecure and may be jumping ship ahead of time. So there are so many complex issues that go into that.
So yeah, I'd like Robin to kind of jump in, because now we got everything done. But my question for you and Dr. Robin is, so what is the biggest challenge you have seen with your clients that, post-merger or let's say they open up a new division or whatever the case may be, they just brought in another partner and they need to integrate things. What's the biggest challenge that you've seen in your line of work?
One of the biggest challenges is that we don't quite understand that when two companies are blending, that there are personalities. So there are the two leaders who say, oh, we work really well together, or we have similar cultures, so I think we'll do well together. And then we come together and we realize that the cultures are not similar at all, but also that we now have this acquired group who are trying to understand where do they fit in this organization. Do I fit in? And so there's this, there's that whole, instead of collaborating, they begin to compete because they don't understand where they quite fit in. And it's not just on the acquired side, but it's also on the buyer side. And so, Mark just mentioned, the things that happen on the acquire side, but on the buyer side, we are also seeing where the buyer company is chaotic. Like they're not really put together very well. And so they acquire this new company and the employees bail ship or bail because they learned that this company that just acquired them, they don't really work very well. They're all over the place. They don't have good procedures. Their procedures are really crazy. So I think on the buyer side, leaders also have to get themselves together, and create a culture that newly acquired employees want to come into. So
Wow.
it's kind of on both sides.
Wow, good point.
Yeah.
Awesome, appreciate that. Hey, David, any awesome presentation, by the way. It definitely has a lot of I love the case studies. We love the case studies here, just hearing those back end stories. Can you let's close us out here? Do you have any final thoughts on the subject matter?
Yeah. I'll just wrap quickly with emphasizing what I said a moment ago. We tend to talk about the transaction. I always say when we get in a room with a bunch of professionals, the attorneys, the CPAs, the wealth advisors, and so on, and if I say exit planning, we too often go to the transaction. And so what I've learned over the years and what we try to focus on, and this is how we really design our broader process, is that in fact we all have to start working with these owners earlier on in the process. And what does that take? Everyone just thinks revenue and top line, and some of these things about the people, about the teams, about the business process infrastructure. There's so much else there, and so if we can start earlier, then we can help these people be more successful and have a phenomenal transaction at the end as well. We're going into year 3 with a client, and it was just what we talked about. It was getting in their heads, a husband-wife couple, and what are you trying to do? And we have some time, and then sitting there talking and getting them to the point where they would take the first step. And we're in there doing just almost everything that we've been talking about, working on the team and working on the culture and all these things that are not necessarily those concrete dollars. And so that's sort of, if I can get on my start preaching for a moment, it's bringing all the disciplines to the table as early as possible, and having the wherewithal, and what we all do individually, to talk to our clients and say, look, you can tell them I'm great at what I do, but we need these other folks at the table collaborating. Yeah, so that's where I would leave it.
I want to turn one of these questions back to you. I wanted to answer this one. What do you say to clients to get them to start on a plan? I want the answer to that one.
I've always said this, and maybe, like I said, COVID's helping a little bit, but I think too often, unfortunately, there's some challenge that they have, and they realize they have an issue. It's a health issue. It's really damage done with COVID or something like that. But I'll say this too, and goes right back to your team and the collaboration side of this, is if any one of us is a trusted advisor to the client, we should all be able to get that next person in, at least for a conversation, and broaden the conversation for the owner. That's how I would put it. If we can get face to face, if you can get face to face, you can talk about I talked today about my experiences. You can talk about yours, and just point out all these problems that people have had, and try to get them to take at least that first step. And I'm sorry, I'll close. Here's my second closing. I was going to close. Here's the real closing. If we can get them to get at least a good estimate of value today, everything else comes from it. If that is the trigger, period, nonstop, because they're going to be horrified, and it'll get them off of their rear ends to maybe start.
Get them fired. Yeah, we have done that. Get them fired up a little bit. Like you said, my business is work. What? Don't tell me our business is work. Let me get to work. Get some clients in here. Some business. But so hey, David, awesome presentation. Appreciate you coming to our chapter here at Eminae and sharing your insight. And hopefully you come back sometime and do a follow up. I love the case study. I like to hear the aftermath. I think Jeff is still here. Hey Jeff, we still have a few minutes. You want to? Still a few minutes. You mind share a bit more about that deal? Like you said that
Yeah, sure,
yeah.
sure, be happy to.
Yeah.
So I was involved with a service type of business. We had gotten to, we'd done, well, let me go to the beginning. We originally had a deal with a particular buyer. We walked away from it because we weren't ready. We realized that we had missed our estimates, our budget by 50%. So we pulled the deal off the table. We then re-huddled together. I had the business owners pivot and they built the business back up. And then they re-engaged 6 months later. We met our numbers, we exceeded our numbers, re-engaged, went through the due diligence process, about ready to go to contract. And then the buyer pulled out because they had another company that was bigger and better and more of an impact on their clients. So that was very sad. So they pulled it out. And I guess it's a kind of a blessing because today they lost their biggest client. So their numbers are cut in half. They're going to have to start cutting staff and things like that. So, you know, I guess things happen for a reason. And in this case, it was, thank God, because if they had done the deal, they would have been clawed back, I guess. And it would have been a very ugly situation. So, but the thing that bothered me is that we spent all this money and then the buyer left us at the altar, which was kind of sad. But I guess it happens more often than we talk about, right?
That happened to me last year. I was in work with a buyer. I spent 3 months due diligence. Really nice offer, and he didn't disclose to us he was trying to buy another company as well, and backed out. But it's his loss. I mean, the numbers came. They had a banner year last year, so if he comes back to the table, he's not going to be able to afford it. You know, the numbers are phenomenally well this 21. So it does happen. He kind of hate it when it happens. Everyone's pissed off. My clients were making plans to Hawaii and wife and so on. Asking, hey, what I'm going to do with the fish tank? And there's a fish tank in the office. Like, I don't know. You know, no, you know, do something. We could be about, you know, get us out of the office and making plans already. But I mean, the things you got to go through.
Hey, I'm curious from David, how often do you hear these things happen, or are they rare?
No, they do, you know, and at different stages along the way. Yeah, definitely. You know, it just does for all kinds of reasons. It may be that they're serious. They may find something that's real, you know, that they didn't know about and back away. Things could change in their business. Obviously, so many things with COVID dynamics. As you say, they may be looking at multiple businesses, and so it's, we can do our best. You know, it's like screening a candidate for a job or something. You know, we can do our best, but
in this case, what was interesting is we weren't really working with the buyer. We were working with an intermediary who was representing a private equity firm that looking for a part of their platform company. They had a need to have a big deal, and they didn't disclose that they were talking to someone else at the same time, which was unfortunate.
Hey, Pete and Andrew, did you have those terms? Do you recommend having those terms in the LOI if the buyer backs out for any reason, unbeknownst to, you know? Because that's ridiculous. You spend all this money in due diligence and the buyer backs out. Have you guys seen any terms in your agreements to protect the seller in that event?
It's tough. It's tough to bind them. I mean, you do have like kind of a limited exclusivity period, so to give the seller a chance to move on. So you have that. So
yeah,
it's typically very large deals that have those termination fees. So once you hit the lower middle market, it's pretty tough to convince a buyer to agree to that.
Yeah, unless they put some money up front, you know.
We're in the middle of one actually where we did it, and it's a smaller business, and it's part of it really was because our client, the seller, was, you know, again, first time through it. Oh, well, what if the buyer goes away? What if, and we're like in explaining the process and so on. And finally, there was so much push, we put it a little bit in there, and they ended up negotiating it. There's a very small amount in there, but it got her to a little bit of a comfort level, at least to show in this case that this buyer was serious. But yeah, it's tough. It's hard to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Appreciate the feedback from everyone. Rob and Andrew. Rob, Jeffrey, Mark, Peter, David, and Lizel, who you see here, that's my assistant. She's taking some notes for us here. So thank you guys for attending, and hopefully see you guys next week at our forum. All right. We hopefully have a big, we're looking forward to that event, and enjoy the rest of the evening, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.
Presentation.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye-bye.